We are mucus free. 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 We are mucus free.
All right. Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Professor Spira, and you are now plugged into the Mucus-free Life Podcast, episode number 6. And I'm really excited about today's episode. We have a great guest that we are going to have some fun with in a little bit. A man by the name of Michael Fathauer. We're going to be talking about a number of topics that we don't normally talk about here. Some other people say, hey, all you guys ever talk about some Mucusless Diet? Well, we're going to be getting into some stuff that is takes living the Mucusless Diet to the next level. And give me a moment. Let me have some fun with check everything. Make sure everything is going well. If you have access to the chat, feel free to say hi. If you are getting here, feel free to share this. Trying to get this podcast out far and wide to a lot more people. And if you do see any technical issues or something, let me know in the chat. And we're going to have some fun today. So, here in the United States, we just had something called the 4th of July. And I'm not going to get into the nutty history and all of that nonsense. Maybe we might touch on a little bit of that with Michael, because he's fairly knowledgeable about some of these things related to the so-called United States of America. And but what I like to look at is the insanity that happens during 4th of July, during many of the ritualistic periods of time when it seems as if within society people move from stimulant to stimulant to stimulant. And I'm not just talking about the food. The food goes along with it. But they move from Christmas to Easter. We got Halloween, 4th of July, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. Every so often, there is some kind of pus-fueled celebration. And it's as if it gives people something to look forward to, because within this kind of society, for it to function, people have to be occupied. You can't give people too much time, like the masses of people. So if you have poor people that are going through it that don't have the power to be able to articulate their struggle, and it's real hard for them to kind of uprise, to be able to actually bring all of those folks together. They've done a wonderful job here in the U.S. of dividing people up by race, by socioeconomic status, by a number of various factors. People are well divided. And that is in the best interest of those who are perceived to be the ones who are wielding power, so-called power. Pus power. You know, you say, pus power. But in order for this to all work, it goes back to the old, bread and circuses thing. You keep people occupied. Don't think. They use the term occupation for one's job. What's your occupation? Keeps you occupied. You're not spending time trying to work on your freedom if you're occupied. You're not taking, you're not feeling the pain when you're occupied. You got your virtual reality, you got your TV with 1 million stations, your internet, all of this entertainment. You got your alcohol, totally available all over the place on every corner. And of course you got your food, cheap, nasty processed food that you can get 24 hours a day all over the place. And so 4th of July really represents, it's one of these times when we can really see the insanity, where sometimes even pus and mucus eaters that have no clue what we're talking about can look at some of the circumstances and say, yeah, this kind of nutty. As we, Brother Air was talking about a couple weeks ago, where he had to start complaining. We started saying, hey, this is important to us. Where people complain to us about all kinds of different things. When they're uncomfortable, we'll be sitting there eating some fruit or a salad, and somebody will start complaining with us and say, is that all you gonna eat? Is that you just gonna eat a salad? Is that you just having some fruit? Wow, you need some meat. Why they complain to us? But then we're sheepish when it comes to saying, that dead carcass smells terrible. That dead carcass is making my life, is lowering my standard of life. Could you please put that away? Could you please keep that stench away from my nose? That gets a response. But when they do it, it's okay. When they're making fun of us for just eating fruits and eating an apple, walking around. I used to walk around with a bag of lettuce as if it was some kind of snack or something. That's out the question. But so without further ado, this week we have a Dockery segment, and he has a few stories for you. A lot of them relating to the 4th of July. So I think I'm going to turn it on over to Doc Dockery, who is the official Mucus-free Life journalist and has been with us for many years. He was back when we had the radio show Immortality Pipeline, and he is here with us again today. So I'm going to turn it on over to Mr. Doc Dockery. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Doc Dockery, and you are now listening to Bizarro World Headline News. A patient dies from fecal transplant containing drug-resistant bacteria. The donor stool had not been tested for the drug-resistant bacteria before the procedure, the FDA noted. One person has died. The FDA is warning healthcare providers that the use of feces for transplantation purposes can lead to serious or life-threatening infections. A 19-year-old was killed Thursday in a fireworks explosion in a residential neighborhood in East Fort Worth, Texas. In separate incidents, 2 young children and a man suffered minor injuries in other July 4th fireworks accidents in the city. Medical professionals are sharing the worst 4th of July accidents they've ever seen. It's all fun and games until somebody loses an eye. The 4th of July is a time for beer, barbecues, and fireworks. Good golly. But on a recent Reddit thread, medical practitioners have been telling stories which function as excellent reminders to practice caution over the holiday. Here are some of the worst injuries that doctors, nurses, and first responders have treated due to 4th of July incidents. Quote, I had a 9-year-old lose an eye a few years ago, recalls one commenter. An older kid shot a bottle rocket at him and the bottle rocket hit him in the right eye. The globe ruptured from the explosion. I had to pack his eye socket with gauze in attempt to keep the rest of the globe together. But it was pretty obvious that the eye was a total loss. The other kid was prosecuted for the incident. I helped with this one as an intern a while ago, says another commentator Some drunk guy was holding a mortar tube and firing it off. He put his hand over the tube to hopefully stop it from coming out. Ended up blowing up the majority of his hand and burned a hole in his abdomen. Somebody else who worked in a burn unit says they dread this particular holiday. Quote, every year there's a bunch of fireworks and grill and kitchen fire incidents coming in with something that could have been prevented or avoided. If the people involved had just taken a few moments to realize what could go wrong with this idea. Hand open, there's just a little damage, but with a closed hand, yeah, anywhere from a few fingers to the majority of the whole hand is gone. So keep this in mind.
America!
And in happier news, Joey Chestnut eats 71 hot dogs to win Nathan's hot dog eating contest for the 12th time in a row. Joey Chestnut is an American hero, a competitive eating legend. And some of you may recall years ago, around 2006, is the first time that I actually reported on Mr. Chestnut, as he had won back then, and he's been winning ever since. This man is a winner.
He is the silent warrior who stands where land meets horizon.
Indeed.
Steadfast and unshakable.
Yes.
A city on a hill, lit for all to see.
The man, the myth, the legend. Give it up. 35 years of age, 230 pounds, 6'1".
He is a bead of light floating in the dark.
A bead of light floating in, oh my hero. Yes.
Fight until he is the last man standing on the dirt-covered surface of the earth.
The man, the myth, the legend. Ladies and gentlemen,
One nation under God, indivisible. The #1 ranked eater in the world.
yeah.
74 hot dogs and buns. The Nathan's famous hot dog eating champion of the world. Joey Chestnut!
Yes. Give it up. Give it up. Get that man a massage. Get him a happy ending. Get him anything he wants. This man is a treasure. Kneel down. On one knee, genuflect. Kiss the ring.
United States of America!
Yeah.
From 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin!
We are off in the 103rd iteration of the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest.
Yeah.
Joey Chestnut, the man to beat.
Oh, that's just skill. So this is the last 26 seconds. Chestnut is at 68. He's eaten 68 hot dogs. In the previous year, he'd eaten 74. And what's he going to do? The next guy closest is 48, Breeden. Might as well just give up. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen of the world, look on his works, ye mighty, and despair. He has surpassed the kings of Egypt.
I mean, that goes without saying. He surpassed the kings of Egypt. Come on.
Dogs and buns.
Yes.
12 victories in Coney Island. The champion of the world, Joey Chestnut.
It is a privilege to share the same country with this man.
Oh, it's just I was going for 75. I always love to get a new record. You look at everybody out here; they wanted a record, and they're out here standing in the heat. But we'll see. And hopefully next year I'll come back and I'll strategize and I'll figure out a way to do it.
The American treasure, Mr. Joey Chestnut. So I want to congratulate Mr. Chestnut for his service to this country. He is an American Idol, a treasure, and doggone it, get this man a root beer. Well, that'll do it for this week's edition of Bizarre World Headline News. I'm Doc Dockery, and be unsafe out there. All right, well, that Doc Dockery he's a priceless addition to this podcast, and I appreciate all the work that he does to bring us these important public interest stories, and we got to see a little bit of footage of some of the insanity of the so-called 4th of July festivities and traditions. And now you got to understand, I'm coming from a place of experience. Before practicing the Mucusless Diet growing up, I wasn't really big into messing around with fireworks, but I messed with fire in the Boy Scouts. We would, the good thing about that was you had people around that were teaching you how to be safe with it, but then you would still go off and mess around with it. So there's some things I did back then that was not very, very smart when it came to fire, but I did almost get injured with somebody else messing around with fireworks, just like in one of those videos. I was at a backyard party. This was maybe senior year of high school, and I was like, man, y'all need to stop messing around with those. And these kids these guys that kept on messing around, and they set one off, and it went kind of like by my head. And back then, I was a 250-pound football player, so I looked at these dudes and they ran away because I was mad, and they didn't want to be injured, because I probably would have did a worse job than if they would have got hit with that firecracker themselves. So I'm coming from a place of experience. My goal is to expose the reality in a way that most people have not thought about or seen it. Because when you practice the Mucus Diet Healing System for long enough, you start going down these plant-based paths, if it leads to the Mucusless Diet, eventually you're going to start to see the world differently. Things that used to make perfect sense no longer make any sense. And the kind of logic that you are now using, the kind of wisdom that you're now espousing, is totally rejected by people that are listening to you. A lot of people closest to you don't want to hear nothing about it. They don't want none of that. You might be saying the most rational stuff in the world when it comes to healing, physiological liberation, and You might as well just go and set off a firecracker, blow your hand off, because they don't want to hear it. So I try to do things that unveil, show the absurdity, show the ignorance, show the stupidity in something that I used to be a part of. And so it's not to just say, like it's us versus them. It's saying, no, it's us versus us, and as many of us as possible need to wake up, because it's ridiculous, this insanity that we're dealing with here. So hopefully you enjoyed that little segment. Now, without further ado, I want to bring on our guest for today. This is Michael Adam Fathauer, and I met him last year at the Eric Day celebration. He came up and got a chance to just really hang out with him and talk. And since then, we've been doing a lot of work on Facebook. He helps out with running the Facebook group and a number of other things. And so let me go ahead and bring Adam on, or not Adam, but Michael Adam Fathauer. Let's bring him on. Say what's up. What's going on, man?
Hey, how you doing? I was just smiling about Adam. The funny thing is, my name was supposed to be Adam, but somebody in my family, we can tie this into mucus and pus, someone in my family actually jumped off the Skyway Bridge.
Oh, man.
Survived. This was down in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
So they jumped off the Skyway Bridge, survived, and then shot themselves. And their name was Michael, and I got named after them.
Wow.
So it was going to be Adam Michael. So now it's Michael Adam.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. That is deep. So, so tell the folks a little bit about yourself, how you got into the Mucusless Diet, and kind of your background, some of the things that you do.
Okay. Well, when I was young, real young, I had a lot of behavioral issues. I used to jump around. I used to, slap the other kids. And in elementary school, I couldn't keep my hands to myself, and I was eating a lot of sugar and cereals and things that are cheap and just on a tight budget with a single mother raising my sister and I. Affected behavior for sure. So I mention that because now I don't, keep my hands to myself, but also I don't fidget as much. I was diagnosed. They said I had ADD, and I think I just didn't like being in school because my brain and my mind are always wandering off and whatnot. But
right.
I just mentioned all that stuff because those things, those behavioral characteristics, they don't have to be like once you're labeled with that. It doesn't have to be you. Nobody ever looks at the diet. Nobody ever looks at the food. And I recently, let me see here, not too recent, but about 2010, my father had some issues with his health, and he had come into a lot of money, and then he had someone that was like a girlfriend that was around and enjoyed the lifestyle and helped him spend all his money, and then she left him, and he felt like a dummy because my sister and I were trying to tell him, hey, this chick's using you.
Mm-hmm.
He was single for years, and then all of a sudden he has this money, and here comes a 25. She was 25 years younger than him. She just comes around, she's not too bad looking. My dad falls for it, but the reason I bring it up is because when she was gone and my dad's money was all dried up, we're talking like a couple $100,000 and having fun and buying her stuff or whatever. He got on antidepressants, and the antidepressants 2 weeks later caused him to kill himself. So it's actually not that hard to talk about because he didn't do it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Did it to himself. It was his choices, but it kind of is a little rough, when I was in the other room, by the way, so I was living with him at the time, trying to keep his mental health well. I didn't know about the Mucusless Diet at the time, so I had no idea how to prepare food. I didn't know how close the connection is with food and with mental state of the mind and the body and things like that. So I was doing the best I could. He had certain physical issues where he wasn't able to chew food at the time. He had some saliva glands removed, or he had one of the two saliva glands removed because he had like a growth or something. So of course they went right after that and sold him on that, got him real scared about it. And after he had that removed, he wasn't able to sleep at night because his mouth was always dry. And so he would wake up and he would drink water, and then he'd have to wake up again later on to use the bathroom, to urinate, and then he'd have to drink more water, and he just was not happy. But I brought all this up because the pharmaceutical company or just food itself, who's governing the food? Why? What are they putting in it? Why? That all led me passionately, by the way, because I lost my father to some of this stuff, and I don't think he would have, with a sound mind, ever done that to himself. So that was all I needed to look for answers. So my path started with food, and then who's controlling the food, and then who really is the people that say that they are in control. So my path somehow led me into the Mucusless Diet. I ended up going to culinary school. I got into gardening after my father had passed away or committed suicide because I needed to get my mind off all of that. So gardening, my relationship with plants and growing those fruits and vegetables and things down in Florida at the time saved my life. Like I wasn't thinking about killing myself, but I'll tell you what, like if you haven't had your own little garden, or if you don't go out into the woods and connect with nature, you're missing out on something. So the culinary school was pretty fun, but now I call it culinary arts because I was just learning how to make stuff pretty, and that was it. Like carve a watermelon or something instead of talking about what it really does when you eat it.
Right.
Eat it. So there was all that, and I learned about the Gerson Therapy when I was in the culinary arts school. There was a lot of alternative information going on, but not in the curriculum. It was all amongst the students. Like, hey, have you ever heard of the Gerson Therapy? I was like, no. And with me, I don't I guess I jump into stuff like full force a lot. And but if it makes sense to me, then I'll try it out. So now I don't do the Gerson Therapy because I have other information, but at the time it was like that was it. That was where, at least, where I should be heading my energy or efforts towards. So a little bit after that, I was going to this acupuncturist with my wife, and because we've been having trouble like having children, so we were going to an acupuncturist trying to do the naturopathic thing, and the lady there was really nice. But one day I mentioned to her, I was like, hey, one of my testicles is like 3 times the size it's supposed to be. What do you think's going on there? Don't hit me with needles there or nothing, but
Right.
So I'm talking to her about that, and she said, well, you have mucus in your body, you have blockages. And I was like, all right, well, how do I get rid of the mucus? And she didn't have a list of foods. She wasn't able to tell me, don't eat this, eat this. She just said, you've got mucus in the body. And she might have, said like certain stuff causes mucus, but she had no idea about the Arnold Ehret, the Mucusless Diet Healing System.
Right.
By Arnold Ehret. And I typed that in. I was like, mucus, like, where do I start? So I'm sitting in front of my computer. I type in mucus or mucus-free foods or whatever, and I found Professor Spira's video on the top 10 mucus formers, where you had like a fake audience laughing and clapping and everything. And
yeah.
I just thought that was great.
Yeah.
I was new to the information, but my kind of sometimes what am I trying to say? Sometimes my sense of humor is a little weird to other people, but when I saw your little videos, I was just laughing like it was perfect. So it caught my attention, and the information was good too. So I got into the mucusless diet, and man, I hit it hard. I was like 5 months or 4 months, like almost completely mucus free, until I started having like heart palpitations and stuff. And I was like doing the whole raw thing. Like I did understand the book, but I was like, all right, well, if this is better than this, I'm just going to go all for it kind of thing. And then I don't know how many people do this. I think most people would do this because they say these foods create mucus. These foods over here don't create mucus. I'm done. Put the book down. I'm good. But myself at the time, and a lot of people don't focus on transition. And I've heard stories of mucusless diet practitioners that after 4 years, they might try to eat meat again for some reason. They're like, you know what? I'm really craving it. And instead of shaming themselves, they try it. And then their physiology tells them where they're at real quick and says, you can't handle this, that it is making you sick. So then they bounce back and they walk away from it, and they hit the system. They do more enemas or whatnot, and focus more on transition. Don't beat themselves up about it. It's been over 3 years for me since I've had any meat. And
yeah, nice.
So I'm proud about that. Yeah, and a few months ago I had like a dairy relapse that I wasn't even expecting. But
yeah,
what actually happened is I was doing a vegetable juice fast, and I wasn't doing for some reason during my 9-day fast I wasn't doing any enemas. And I know the importance of enemas. I know that when you stir up the dirt, or if you're in a room dusting, you stir up all the dust, you need that dust out. You're going to breathe it in. It's not going anywhere. You got to open up the windows, get a fan going or whatever, and get that stuff out of there as fast as you can, so you're not reabsorbing it and feeling even worse. So what happened to me after the 9-day juice fast, I started in like October. I just like dove into some bad stuff, pizza and cheese and all that stuff. And And you and Brother Air were kind of laughing when you both called me, and it's so funny. Everyone that's listening can relate to this if you're a practitioner or just into like higher vibrations or just you'll know what I'm talking about. But so my vibes were a little low. I was a little off track, and literally 2 days after I started doing enemas again and picking myself off the ground, Brother Air and Professor Spira called me, and they're like, "Hey, how's it going?" Almost knowing that I was going to say I fell off the wagon a little bit.
Right.
So that's what happened. And before I met you, Professor Spira and Brother Air, I put you guys up on a pedestal, almost like you're perfect, and with the whole practice and all that stuff. And then when I actually met both of you, you guys are so humble. Like you're not about the money. You're about helping people, because when you help people that live around you, it's actually going to help you, because you're helping to change the world and to create something better. I don't think too many people are happy with the way the world is, whether they're into this diet or not. Things are really cuckoo right now. So let me see here. Just trying to think of that's kind of like my background that led into the mucusless diet. I can also, going back to like the oversized testicle thing, it didn't even take 6 months, and the testicle went right back down to its normal size. And I find myself as doing more mucus lean stuff. I for a while I was doing mucus-free, and then I would bounce back with some mucus lean for a little period, and then mucus-free again. And then I do construction for a living. So there were certain times where I'd have to do some pretty physically demanding work, and I was questioning, if I could keep the job. And then instead of quitting the job and cutting off the finance, I looked back to the book and also to what my body was telling me, and I was doing more mucus lean stuff, but stuff that still eliminated okay, like a lot of hummus. Like I was doing giant salads with hummus in it and stuff, and I actually the past few weeks I've been using hummus instead of dairy and grain, because the pizza is not really easy to get off of. You eat one pizza and it's like got claws in it. It starts gripping onto you. It's pretty crazy.
Right.
So, but I didn't go back to meat, and that's the thing that I want to talk about, is because I was doing this system, or maybe not perfectly, because I fell off it a little bit, but I didn't go all the way back to eating meat. So I was really happy about that. And another comment I want to make is if you all out there if you can stay away from vinegar, please do it, because vinegar is associated with condiments, and a lot of condiments are associated with meats and ketchup and hamburgers, all that stuff, So I've made my own mustards pretty recently, and if I wanted a pickle, like yesterday, I actually had vinegar again. I went to a cookout, and I was like, you know what? I brought watermelon, and I brought some vegetables, tomatoes, like romaine lettuce, and I made a giant salad. And the funny thing is, I made this big salad, and there was like 7 people there, something like that. And I think 2 people got into the salad a little bit. Just a little bit of salad, though.
Right.
Not much. So they started off with meat, and they had like rice noodles and